Is that better? Can you hear me now? Is that better? Can you hear me now? Okay. I forgot to turn my mic on. I was trying to shovel down some lunch without having a hot mic because, well, that's gross for you to hear me like while starting the stream starting thing is going. So, anyway, hi guys. Drew, I think you must have me like on speed dial because like I didn't even have my screen up and you were there. You're amazing. And Bisbee and Kellen and Padma and Yakamo. Oh my gosh. I'm so excited. You guys are here. So I hope you're having a good Monday. Mondays are kind of yucky. But I had a super lazy weekend in terms of like rolling out of bed and doing stuff. Um, but I did get a lot of Dunton work done. So if I look like I've been like locked in a basement, laying around on a couch, yeah, that's what I've been doing. I actually don't have a basement, but I have been laying around on a couch for 2 days. So today I said, it's Monday, I'm going to get up and I'm going to do some stuff, and I did. I did a whole bunch of Dunton filing, and I did some housework, which was long overdue. And well, actually, I wasn't eating potato chips. I was eating some string cheese and an apple. um, but yeah, I feel slightly accomplished. I have about 12 other things I have to do today, but all in all, it's a good Monday so far. Um, so yeah, this weekend so much Dunton. I'm dreaming Dunton. I'm sleeping, breathing Dunton. Um, yeah, because it's like officially 1 month and 2 days till my my presentation. And I was thinking about it this morning, and I was like, I sort of panic. I mean, I've been in panic mode, and I will be in panic mode like for the next month. Um, the research part of Dunton was very new to me. Going out to museums and universities and talking to librarians and archivists and that kind of stuff, but actually putting together the presentation and all of the stuff that goes with it is actually not something that's new to me, because in my profession as an instructional designer and developer, I've done a lot of this stuff. So I think some of my panic and like mental block, and I don't even want to say it's a mental block because once I start working on it, goes fine. But I have this mental block every time I'm like, oh, okay, I got to sit down and work on my presentation. I got to do Dunton. And I think I get that mental block from like my job, like from, my profession, because I would usually be sitting down like on a Monday morning with just absolute dread and have to sit working on like a 6 hour training content for electrician apprentices. So that's what I would be working on like in my profession. And um, that I mean, I guess if I have to like pat myself on the back, I'm pretty good at it. But it's, subject matter sometimes can be like an absolute drag in the training world. When you're working for other companies and creating content. I've created content like across the board, crazy stuff. Electrician apprentice, COVID stuff for healthcare. That's not so crazy. That's kind of normal. Just all kinds of crazy stuff like that. Teaching people the skills that they need online. And so going back to my roots, and doing content for a classroom presentation, which is something that I did before I got into the technology part of training. It feels like old hat in some ways. And so I have to keep reminding myself of that. It's like, I know this content, right? Hi, Kenny. Happy Monday. So like I know this content. It's just a matter of like getting my dates right. That's one of the things I have like and I mean, you guys hear me do this all the time. I'm like, this thing, I can't remember the date. I can't remember the person's name. So that's the stuff that you put in a PowerPoint presentation and in your notes. It's the stuff that you need to jog your memory. Like, and that's how people present. That's a good presentation. Um, Not to get off on a digression of presentations, but you have probably all been, like, if you've worked in a corporate job, you absolutely have seen utterly boring PowerPoint presentations. If you've never worked in a corporate setting, you have surely seen something online where you're like, ugh, terrible presentation. Unfortunately, maybe it was a training that you did, and people put together PowerPoints and then read them to you, and that's that's the presentation. Like, that's the training. And from my perspective, is like, if all you're doing is reading stuff to me, I don't need you. I just need your presentation, and I can read it myself, right? So a good presentation is really just some basic reference material, like reference info for the people that are in your audience, so that they can kind of connect with what you're saying. Because, some people are not great with just strict auditory information taking, like they need a visual. Or they need to write. Like, I know some people, like, they take information in as they hear it or see it, and they write, and that's that kinesthetic thing. Hi, Eva. But anyway, the point of having the PowerPoint presentation is really just a way for people to kind of put what you're talking to them about into reference, like a frame of reference. And then as a presenter, your job is to, like, fill in and entertain and keep people interested. And so that's why it's really important that you know your content. I had to train stuff at times where I either had not had much time to review the content, or I literally truly didn't understand the content. I have a horror story from I was doing some training. I think it was in 2006, 2007, somewhere in there. And I got a job doing training in, it was in software, but like business analyst type of software. And I have worked with business analysts quite a bit. I understood what they did. But how they utilized the software was like, I sat through many training sessions as like a train the trainer, and it was like whew, whew, over my head. And I was trying so hard. I was reading these textbooks on like programming languages and stuff that these business analysts were supposed to be, understanding. And I just bombed so bad. And in fact, like, I went to Texas. I was in Houston or Dallas, and it was like my first training, and I just was not prepared. And I went in there just like, the people that I was training were much smarter and more, I don't want to say, don't get me wrong when I say much smarter. They were much more knowledgeable about the thing I was teaching them. So yeah, it was like, it totally blew up. And so that's a situation you never want to have when you're having, like, you're lecturing to people or training them about something. So anyway, that's a long story to tell you that although I'm gonna keep, right up to the second that I step on the little podium or the little thing where you stand, I'm gonna be stressing, because that's just the way it is. But I'm feeling pretty confident, because as I've been looking through all of my Dunton content, I'm like, yeah. And I keep finding things that I had, like, either missed when I was scanning or, just forgot about. And so that organization right now is good in that way. And it's, just keeping me going. So how can you be an expert at absolutely everything? So you're not. In the training world, you're an expert in nothing. And you get hired to create the training, and sort of my expertise is in taking content and turning it into something that people can learn from. And along the way, that I have to work with people called subject matter experts. So, for instance, when I was working on the electrician apprentice program, which was an utter nightmare. It was like 5 years of my life. It was, I did learn a lot about electricity and being an electrician, and I know how to do all of the calculations to find, wattage and all that stuff. But I had to work with subject matter experts, so people that are actual master electricians. And they would be able to fill in and say, like, this is what we need to teach here, and then I would take what they were saying and turn it into something that's educational. So, yeah, the great thing about Dunton is and that is my goal, to become like a Dunton scholar. I want to know more about Dr. Dunton than anybody in the world. And yeah, I could stand there pretty much say anything. Yeah, Dr. Dunton climbed Mount Everest. Can you guys believe it? No, but I feel like, he's been so fascinating to research. I feel like I could research him forever because he's so interesting. And it's almost like, I don't know if you've ever read somebody's diary, and you're like, you feel like you're kind of in their head. And by no means is the stuff I'm looking through Dr. Dunton's diary, but in some ways, he puts his thoughts down and he writes notes and things. And I feel like I'm kind of in his head at times. So how old was Dr. Dunton? So you comment, I think that he credits Marie Webster with getting him interested in quilting for his patients. So he actually never made a quilt, but he started off by hanging a quilt show at Shepherd Pratt, which is where he was working at the time. And so he was born in 1868, and that was 1916 when he hung that show. So somebody do the math. I'm terrible. I can't do math in my head. So yeah. Angelina, hi. I'm so glad you could pop in. No worries. I'm glad you're here though. And thank you for sending the show some love. So yeah, he would have been, I guess, in his 40s or 50s when he was doing, when he first got started introducing his patients to quilting. And I think from 1916-ish until 1929, he was corresponding with Marie Webster, with Ruth Finley, a few other people, and he was really just kind of collecting quilt patterns. And I have pictures of two quilts that his patients made. I think one is from the patients at Shepherd Pratt, and one are patients from Harlem Lodge, and they're both based on Marie Webster patterns. One of them I think was really quite good. I mean, the picture's not great. It's a black and white picture, but it looks like the Marie Webster quilt. The other one, not so much. The picture is bad, but kind of looking at it, it's like you don't quite know what you're looking at, and I don't know. I feel like maybe it wasn't put together the way it was intended by Marie Webster, and like they never put the border on and stuff like that. So anyway, but then, so long story short, then when he went from Shepherd Pratt to Harlem Lodge, he was managing this private sanitarium. That was 1929, 1930, and he was there until 1939, so about 10 years. And I don't want to say it was a vacation for Dr. Dunton, but I don't think he had to work as hard as he did when he was at Shepherd Pratt and Johns Hopkins. Because when he was in those places, he was teaching, he was doing hardcore research on schizophrenia, and he was seeing patients. He did 8,000 other things. Like he was editing journals, he was starting up psychiatric associations, all kinds of stuff. So he was very busy during those years. And when he went to Harlem Lodge, he was still doing some of that stuff, but he wasn't like doing research and treating patients and, doing all these things. So he was kind of more focused. And the 30s are when you see he starts writing people and people start writing him. And towards the end of the 30s is when he starts lecturing. So, he was from 1916 to the early 50s. He was active in the world of quilting. And, by 1950 or so, people considered, he was like the preeminent East Coast knowledgeable guy. Florence Petto, another East Coast person that was considered like very knowledgeable. So, so that's kind of, his trajectory with quilts. It's like 4 decades of just getting down and dirty. I was looking at some of the things that he focused on, like the things that he researched, and some of them, and I kind of noticed this before, but I'm like really focusing on it now. He researched a lot of the same things that Ruth Finley and Marie Webster did. And I don't know if he was, and I may have mentioned this before, I don't know if he was like trying to further their research or trying to, I think in some cases he was trying to further their research. In other cases, I'm kind of like, was he trying to prove something? Like, you may or may not know, Ruth Finley wrote a book about Godey's. Godey's was I guess mid to late 1800s. It was like the fashion plates. It was considered like the first ladies magazine, and in the fashion plates, and it was like the very first Cosmo or Elle or Vogue. It was like the first Vogue. And so Ruth Finley wrote the book about it, and for some reason Dr. Dunton started collecting, like, he had some color plates from Godey's. He had a whole bunch of like pictures and newspaper clippings and things from people in wearing like clothing from the 1800s. He had 2 cabinet photos, or like, I don't think one of them's a daguerreotype and one's a cabinet photo of these random people. I don't know who they are. One of them's got Marie written on the back. The number of people in his life named Marie, there's no way of knowing. So he was looking at stuff like that, and I'm like, oh, and then Carrie Hall wrote a book called From Hoop Skirts to Nudity, and that was also about fashion. And so I don't know, I guess he just was like, well, these ladies are writing about this, it must be a trend. Let me look into it too. But I can't see where it went anywhere. He also was really into eagles, and kind of interesting about the eagles. And so I've been saving all that stuff to one folder so I can, see. And it was over a pretty long period of time that he was looking at eagles. So eagle quilts, and just the use of the eagle motif in fabric. He collected some chintz that had eagles printed on it, and I think it was from the 50s. It wasn't old chintz. But literally a piece of chintz fabric was in his scrapbooks, and all sorts of interesting stuff about eagles. And side note, eagles, I was looking through some of the Smithsonian stuff, and I think Mary showed it to us a while back on the Quilt Nerd Show. But the Smithsonian basically has this, but I was saying evil. No, eagle, like caw, caw. So yes, Angelina, did you see my Instagram post? So yeah, I was looking through their, they have the basically open source, Creative Commons. You just have to give them, I don't even know if they ask for attribution, honestly, but they have all kinds of stuff. And I was looking for like, quilts, because some of Dr. Dunton's quilts, like the ones that we know where they are, I may or may not be able to use without permission. So I'm just looking for generic quilts that I can, just use in the presentation, just to throw a generic quilt in there. So obviously looking for album quilts. But I stumbled across this eagle quilt. It's a white quilt with this golden eagle and all kinds of flourishes and curlicues. And I was like, oh, I know that quilt. And it's in the Renwick collection. And I apologize, I didn't grab a link to it, but if you go to my Instagram, it's like the most recent thing. Um, anyway, it was a gift to the Renwick, the family of the woman that made it, in honor of all the people that she quilted with. Um, and, but I have the kit, and this is the gold color that it is. You can see that. But yeah, it was a Paragon kit. And so my question to the museum professionals out there is, like, do they want to know this? I don't know that they necessarily, they say the unknown designer. And unfortunately, even with this, I don't know the designer because, these companies that package this stuff up, either patterns or kits, they didn't, in fact, they almost never, reference the designer. They never give the person's name. I would say the second wave of colonial revival, quilt revival, that's when you start seeing people like 70s and 80s kits would have or might have the designer's name on them. And of course, sometimes the kits are like, they're self-published. But as an example, Marie Webster, she did her own. I don't know that she actually sold kits. She sold the patterns, and the little fabric swatches came with it, and she was hooked up with, I guess it was Sears or like one of them. It had to have been Sears. Yeah, she was hooked up with them or one of the fabric companies where you could buy the fabric. But her patterns, eventually, she must have sold the rights to Mountain Mist or Stearns and Foster, because mid-century, you will see Marie Webster patterns in Mountain Mist materials, and they say nothing about Marie Webster. So, that's what this situation is. But it was really interesting to me, and I have no idea if this is the original packaging. It seems like, I don't, in the 1950s, did they have plastic packaging like this? I feel like an idiot asking that question, but I just feel like this packaging may not be the original packaging, or if it is, then this is much later than the 50s. But a friend of mine, as soon as I posted it, she's like, "Oh my gosh, I know somebody who knows packaging." And I'm like, "You go, girl. Thanks for the help." So anyway, like I said, I don't know if this is exactly from the 50s, but it's definitely pretty old. It's definitely older than like the 70s. So anyway, I started thinking, I'm like, I guess I need to reach out to somebody at the Renwick and just let them know, like, maybe you want to update the record for that particular quilt in your collection. And it's because it's a kit quilt, and that, certainly the lady who made it, I'm sure, did a beautiful job. For all we know, she might have been the original designer. I don't know. But, at some point, Paragon was shilling it. And so it's as shown in Women's Day, which is, they say, is the A&P magazine. So I'm guessing A&P meaning the grocery store, I guess. And maybe Women's Day was just originally sold there. I don't know. Women's Day is still published, right? Isn't it kind of it's not really a tabloid, but it's kind of I remember my mom used to get it, and I would read it because some of the stuff in it was funny. But anyway, so that's that. That was, yeah. Angeline, I'm pretty sure I've seen it like in the grocery store at like a Target or Walmart or something. But yeah. So, and one other thing that I knew this, but my friend mentioned. Yeah, that is this. Oh, you know what? You're right. Women's World. And this is Women's Day. You're right. Yeah. Anyway, but my friend Elaine mentioned, and I think I knew this, that JCPenney sold a lot of kits. And so I went off on a little bit of a tangent last night looking to see if I could find a JCPenney catalog. And it looks like they were producing like a little fashion flyers and things in the 50s, but like the full-blown JCPenney's catalog I think didn't come out until the 60s. So if this is truly from the 50s, I'm not going to find a catalog. And you would not believe how much people sell old JCPenney's catalogs for. I was like, surely I could find one like somebody scanned, right? I could buy all of the JCPenney's catalogs from the 1980s for $500 on eBay, though. It's crazy what people will sell and buy. So, anyway, I'm throwing it out there. It's not like an urgent research project, but if anybody ever comes across a like extremely old JCPenney's catalog with kit quilts in it, I'd love to know. I'd love to see that and hear about it. Because I'm low key obsessed with kit quilts, and once I kind of get up over the hump of Dunton stuff, I think kit quilts might be my next thing. Padma, there are so many archives out there, and it's 90% of it. 95% of it you're never gonna find like just Googling. So yeah, it's a matter of finding where some of those archives are. I know here in Baltimore they have lots of stuff archived, and you can find stuff through the genealogy sites and stuff too. So it's a matter of like going down the rabbit holes, and sometimes you luck out. So I don't know, for those of you that sometimes go down these rabbit holes, sometimes you could just be like, let me Google, and Google will just come back with like, yeah, here's a link. And you're like, holy cow, I've been looking for that for ages in Ancestry, Family Search, newspapers.com, and all you had to do is Google it. That's when I get mad, because I'm like, wow, I should have done that first. So anyway, off on my research tangent. I could talk about research and quilt topics forever. JCPenney is still around, as far as I know. In fact, I think I just saw a back to school commercial for them. Yeah. I'm trying to think, like, surely they've got to still have some brick and mortar stores. But maybe they are like mail order now. I don't know. Anybody got a JCPenney near them that's still open? I know the JCPenney that I grew up with, I mean, it was like one of the anchors in the mall. So today I'm not going to read from books today. I'm going to read letters. And one letter that is absolutely fantastic, that I found, I wanted to read to you, is from a lady named Maggie Engel. Knoxville still has a JCPenney. Yeah, I feel like JCPenney always was like, so when you're a kid whose parents never have enough money to buy you like name brand clothes, except like maybe once a year on your birthday, there's this strata of stores. So there was Belk/Leggett's, and where I was growing up, it was called Leggett or Leggett's. Down, I think further south, it's called Belk. Then below that, then you had JCPenney. And then below that, you had Sears. And then below that, you had Kmart. And above Belk/Leggett, you had like Hex or Lord & Taylor. Like those were the fancy ones. So yeah, JCPenney was like solidly there in the middle. And I would say like I'd get my back to school clothes there sometimes. And then once I got older, I was like, I would rather die than wear JCPenney's clothes. I think my grandmother's entire wardrobe came from Penny's. But yeah, I mean, they were a really good store. So Kellen is saying that they operate 664 stores across 49 states and Puerto Rico. Okay. So yeah, they're still going strong, it sounds like. And that's good to hear. I think of Penny's as like one of those American mall staples, and Sears was one like that too, and it makes me sad that like like Sears is no longer. And oh geez, what is this, Eva? Montgomery Ward's, yes, Ward's was another one. And like Ward's is out of business now, right? Kellen, I want to know what charm school at Montgomery Ward's. Are we talking about like manners and table setting and walking with a book on your head, or oh my goodness. Eva, I'm not sure what this link is. Let me open it. Oh, these are the Sears catalogs. You are. Oh, I see it. Pennies. Ah! Oh my gosh, Eva. See, this is the stuff. Like, this is what I need you guys for. I probably never would have found this on my own. This is amazing. Wow. Okay, I'll fall down that rabbit hole later. Don't you guys just want to look at like the 1940s Sears catalog? Actually, there's probably really good stuff in there. Anyway, all right. So let us read what Mrs. Carl Engel has to say to Dr. Dunton. Uh-oh, I think I accidentally closed one of them. Poops. Hold on a sec. Let me open this again. One of the things I started doing was putting all of Dr. Dunton's correspondence in date order, so chronological order, and then my next project will be putting them in order by the person he was corresponding with, because I feel like that'll be a much easier trip through. All of his stuff, because it's infuriating to try to go through his correspondence. He's got stuff all over the place. He had what I think was a really good system, which was alphabetically. And the one good thing that he did was he saved a copy of what he sent. So, I don't know if that's a doctor thing, or, I mean, I know lots of people did that, saving correspondence, but I don't know if he developed that from being a doctor, or if it was just like his personal thing. But anyway, so Mrs. Carl Engel, or Maggie Engel, wrote to him. She lives in Indiana, or lived in Indiana. She wrote to him, and I can't find any evidence that he wrote her back, but, and this was in 1854 also. So, Dr. Dunton was getting up there at that point. I want to say it was 1950 or 1951 when he donated all of his stuff to the museum, to Baltimore Museum of Art. And so this letter must have gotten in there. I mean, I think he piecemealed some of it, so I think this letter got in there afterwards. Anyway, this lady is so fascinating. I totally wish that I could meet her or have met her. She is a riot. So I'm going to read this letter to you. It's a shame, I don't have any evidence of Dr. Dunton writing her back, but I feel like she would have been a fantastic person to have conversations with. So this is her letter. December 6th, 1954. Dear Dr. Dunton, tempus fugit, and how to use the vernacular of the day. I note your letter is dated August 31st, and we are well on to Christmas. So apparently he wrote to her, I guess. But there's, again, no record of it, so I don't know. And he didn't respond to this, so. In the interim, I bought your book and am enjoying it. I have most of the books, I think, and have seen, I believe, all of them. In addition to this, I had out from the Gary Library, she's from Indiana, somewhat I would call ravishing color prints of old quilts, which were gotten out by, of all things, the WPA, I believe in Pennsylvania. I tried to get them the second time, but the librarian couldn't find them. But I am again putting them on my list, and will try to find out where I might get them or see them. About myself, I am an old girl swinging on that gate that opens only one way, getting toward Social Security age. 1 yard and 2/3 tall, 197 pounds in the buff. Now this is a person, she is talking to Dr. Dunton. If I'm understanding the letter correctly, he wrote to her once and she's responding. Either way, this is not a woman that he has, like, he's intimate, like, friends with. This is just a random woman. So, 197 pounds in the buff, can read and write and figure to the rule of 3, have my teeth, and never had my giblets proved for, and I hope to depart this world with them. And further, without benefit of clergy, just my ashes to float over Lake Michigan, on which we have our cabin, with lights out for the service. This is just a little shack which we built ourselves with the help of an itinerant carpenter years ago. 30-some to be exact, and have built on and built our chimneys unaided, except when a bricklayer happened to be going down the beach on his way to visit someone. He said he hadn't laid brick for years, and would we let him lay some? And we would. And the craftsmanship he displayed made our bricklaying look quite crude, and all done with such nonchalance. But our work had also love in it. Is she flirting? I don't know. Probably. So, whoops. You comment, what are you asking? You're obviously I've said something that didn't. She's hot sauce for him. Who is it? Hot sauce for Dr. Dunton. Yeah, I'm not sure what I said that sounded like Jubal 3. Oh, maybe giblets? I'm not sure. Yeah, she brought up being in the buff. But 197 pounds. Now, we don't know how tall she is. 1 yard and 2/3. She's 1 yard and 2/3 tall. So however tall that is. 5 feet and 197 pounds. I'm going to say she was a stout lady. Then, you know, coming from a stout lady. Like, let's see. We remain from May until New Year's and then go into Chicago to a hotel for the winter. Now, these people are wealthy. So, now the lake is freezing. We made a living room and also a kitchen wood and coal stove and a kerosene stove in the bedroom, all of which I am stoking this day of a little below freezing. I love the primitive life, and when the season is over, I am 2 miles from anyone, and also my car, which I walk to when I go marketing once a week. My husband commutes to Chicago. He is an engineer. École Polytechnique, Zurich, Switzerland, 1923. So he was European educated engineer. He has the 2 miles to walk night and morning, but he loves walking, as do I. Each day I am out from 1 to 3 hours, depending on the wind. And when I finish this missive to you, I will don my heavy coat and cap and sally forth. I hope this does not seem too weird to you. You know what, Maggie? You're very weird, and I love it. I'm here for it. My favorite quotation is, and from Thoreau, if I am out of step with my companions, it's because I hear a different drummer. Every man should march to the music he hears, no matter how muffled or how far away. I read loads of books, Santayana, Marcus Aurelius, Bertrand Russell, Korsabisky, and other in various subjects. Now, about my interest in quilting. This is still only one page, but it is single-spaced. Now, about my interest in quilting, it was something, I guess, that just grew. My mother had quilts on our beds, even a small one left from my infant days, and even one for my doll buggy. She belonged to the Helping Hand, which quilted at the First Congregational Church, just a small group, and she would say when she took off, I hope Mrs. isn't there. She quilts so badly. When I look back, however, I think there was a certain snobbishness about it. She liked to have just those few women she liked to be there so they could speak freely and know that it would die with them. This is 1954. You know, my guess is, who knows? I don't think he wrote anything to her that would have elicited this response. This lady is just like something else. Let's see now, second page. When I was around 16, I pieced 2 quilts, simple, and I don't know why, and also quilted them myself. They have gone the way of all flesh. None of my friends did this sort of thing. When I was about 25, I made a nice applique. Don't know why either. She just randomly quilting. She doesn't know why. Then about 20 years ago, and now that I think of it, this applique one was in status quo until then, and I finished it. Then at that time, I decided to do the most intricate one I could find a pattern for. And since I was living just outside New York, I went down to the Ladies' Home Journal and got the pattern for their Tree of Life, a most complicated affair with hundreds of grapes and leaves as a border and birds at the base of the tree. I had it quilted by some church ladies who also have changed in workmanship since the days of my youth. Ripped it all out and then had Eleanor Beard do it. So she got the church ladies to quilt her quilt that she'd appliqued. Didn't like it. She ripped it out and had somebody else requilt it. I love it. When I think of it, I don't know how I did it. Since then, and since remaining out here so long, I have 4 others started. Hope I will finish them. A sad thing crept into my life. My only daughter died 3 years ago, which shook my foundations. By the way, this is all one paragraph. She goes from talking about the quilts she's made, the quilts she's starting to make, and oh, by the way, my daughter died, which is very sad, but good Lord. So, my daughter died, which shook my foundation of that most awful thing, tumor of the brain. I don't get over it. I even pause now and lose my thoughts. She was one of those girls who would have been a lady, no matter who might have brought her up. Went through high school and college without ever giving me a minute's worry. Married Stephen W. Corey, who now is assistant to the dean at Teachers College, Columbia. A most delightful girl she was, and not only my daughter, but my dearest friend. You know, Kenny, I think this lady had like a serious case of ADHD and like could not edit herself. It goes on. There's more. I love craftsmanship of all kinds and only hope our civilization doesn't deteriorate till we don't know how to do anything by hand. In my quilts, I used number 12 needles and 150 thread, and I think my workmanship excellent if I do say it myself. What shouldn't? Quoting Mr. Thackeray. I figure skated all my life. Married my married life anyway, as does my husband, meaning we still do. He was runner-up in the men's senior events years and years ago, and he and I both judged for years. We also collect skating prints, figures, and books. My husband plays the accordion, not well, but he loves to practice. So you see, we are hopeful not to need the services of a geriatrician. Now, the next sentence, she's crossed some stuff out and rewritten it. It took me a little while to understand what she was saying, but she says, I hope all this doesn't sound as though I am unhinged. Now, she has scratched out unhinged and written unglued. Same thing in my book. I never see a soul except my husband morning and night and don't know what the word lonesome means. I think she is lonesome, and I think you guys are absolutely right. She's alone 2 miles away from like a road, and she's definitely lonesome. I think I would be classed as the nervous type, and when my husband sees me with those little pieces and with those tiny pieces, and some were infinitesimal on my main event, he shakes his head and doesn't understand how I do it. Oh, I must tell you, I have been to all the museums available to me in the East, Newark, Brooklyn, Metropolitan, New York, and the latter only have 2, one white and the other the most amazing piece of workmanship and artistry. Just the old hexagonal one, but the maker cut pieces with a flower design and leaves trailing so that they make continuity all around the quilt. I took down some drafting paper and colored pencils to get a pattern of it, and after several days gave up. Just too complicated, a real work of art. Whether I quilt or not, I just love to thumb through the books. Let's see. is that last one? Okay. Yeah. We are finally on the last page of your book. I would say it is a work of love, which also, and I do mean love, seems to be going out of date. So many beautiful quilts and such amazing descriptions. You mentioned one at the Art Institute. I think she's written Chicago in here. So the Art Institute Chicago. And while I go there a lot, have never seen it, but will this winter and find it. Have bought paints and equipment and expect to do some painting. I see the plays, no movies but legitimate, and dancing and going alone does not deter me. I am a Gabby girl. Oh yeah? Wouldn't have guessed, Maggie. I've always loved to talk to people. I am not a country girl. Spent my years either in Chicago or New York. After all, we are all taking that one and only journey together. Just two little boats looking for a harbor. I am fearful of boring you, but thinking of quilts, my mind goes back, and apropos this, how I would love some of those old quilts my mother had, and particularly the vases and that old bread plate glass with one side waste not and the other side want not, which certainly was a maxim my mother didn't have to have before her on that plate. We were just a what would be called middle-class family, and of my father and mother, I say they were the salt of the earth. I make my best bow and thank you for writing me, and I think your work of love a masterpiece, which will help carry on the artistry of quilting through the ages. Further, I am not gifted in making things or in doing sewing for the sake of making things or just sewing, only the quilt making. Affectionately, Maggie. P.S. I am Maggie to everyone. The boys at the garage, the market, and have loads of young friends in the skating world. Starting at 16, Maggie to them. I have learned to cook on my little coal and wood range, learned to make bread a couple of years ago, and do all my baking in it. I am not a devotee of Wonder Bread. I wonder why we eat it. Adios. Yes, right? It's on page 3 when she's like, I'm worried I'm boring you. Oh, this poor, unglued, unhinged lady. So that was Maggie. And she, seriously, I think it is sad that she wrote to Dr. Dunton so late in his life, because I feel like if she'd written to him a decade earlier, they probably would have had a great correspondence. But it seems like, he was getting, he was still alive for like another 12 years, but I think he was very discouraged at the end, and particularly since his book never really sold the way he expected it to. He still researched things and he still was interested, but I think that he did not have the energy to, to keep up the correspondence. So a new patient file for Maggie, right? Maybe that's why I can't find the other correspondence. It's in his patient stuff. But what a delightful woman. She probably would annoy the crap out of you if you had to be like with her for very long. But, just in terms of letter writing, she sounds fascinating. And I think, Maggie Engel might be the most unhinged one, but a lot of women kind of wrote him and said stuff like this. And I guess, I don't know, I'm assuming they felt comfortable with him because he was into quilts. And I think they thought, well, this is a man who likes the softer things in life, and he's a doctor, so he's to be trusted. I really think that that's the personality, or that's the character that he portrayed. And I'm not saying that he didn't have such character. He absolutely, I think, was a very moral person. I think he had a very good character. But I think all of these women just trusted him and were willing to just tell him stuff because his personality just came across as like, yeah, let's gossip, tell me stuff, and I'm a doctor, you can trust me, So, but yeah, yeah, it's been really fun kind of rereading some of these letters, and then some of them I had never had time to read, and I'm just reading them now. So the Dr. Fokker of his time. Are you talking about from Meet the Fockers or Meet the Parents? I'm trying to remember who played Dr. Fokker. That was Ben? Was it Ben Stiller's father? I'm trying to remember. Yeah, I'm drawing a complete blank on was who played his parents. Oh, thank you so much for stopping by, Angelina. I was so glad to see you. Mwah! I hope you have a good day. So, well, that was Mrs. Engel. Now, the other thing I have prepared for you, Dustin Hoffman. Okay. I think I was seeing him in my mind, but was thinking, no, it couldn't be Dustin Hoffman. Yeah. Yeah, weren't both of his parents, they were both therapists, I think, if I remember correctly, and they were weird. So the other thing I have prepared for you is, it was what I thought I had the other day, and I ended up reading. It was supposed to be an interview with Darby, but I ended up with a review of Darby. But we really have the interview this time. So this appeared, and I'm going to apologize first of all. It is very difficult to read, and I've cut it up so that I could try to read it continuously because it was huge. It was difficult to print. But this was a New York Times book review. This won't stay open. New York Times book review, April 18th, 1920. And it was written by Joseph Anthony. And it says, author of Our Unseen Guest Answers Questions. So I'm going to do my best to read this. It, unfortunately, I guess they, in libraries or, organizations, papers, whatever, when they scan this stuff, sometimes they did a horrible job. I think they do a lot better job nowadays. But sometimes these newspapers were just not kept in good condition. And so you get what you get. So, okay. Get this. All right. So this is by Joseph Anthony. Many a man who is unconvinced of the validity of psychic phenomenon. Oh gosh, this is going to be difficult to read. Let me zoom in some. Okay. Many a man who is unconvinced of the validity of psychic phenomena has itched for the chance to put certain blunt questions to writers of spiritualistic books. Standing with that group myself, I have had the opportunity to get an unusual interview. Our unseen guest, published recently by the Harpers, is issued anonymously, although Margaret Deland and the publishers vouch for the integrity of its author and the genuineness of his reason for remaining unknown. I sent a series of questions by mail to the author, whom I have not met. The questions and answers are here given, although the author's identity cannot be disclosed. Our unseen guest tells the story of Joan and Darby, a young couple, of how they found a Ouija board, first began working it as a joke, and presently began to receive messages from Stephen, a slain soldier. Afterward, the book tells messages began to come independently of the Ouija board, and there were messages too from a Frederick Gaylord, mentioned in Margaret Cameron's The Seven Purposes. By far the most striking part of the book, however, is its philosophic side. The system of philosophy purporting to have come from Stephen bears a remarkable resemblance to that of William James, a circumstance that inspired me to ask, What training in formal philosophy did you have before writing our unseen guest? To this question, my anonymous correspondent replied, Joan had had absolutely none. As stated in the book, I have had a half-a-year college course in philosophy, just such a preliminary survey of metaphysics as thousands of college students are given every year. I elected this course in the beginning because it was known as a cinch course, and I treated it as such to the end. The recitations took the form of open discussions, and consequently, it was not necessary really to prepare for them. Sometimes I read the text in advance of recitations, and more often I didn't. Despite all this, the discussions did awaken in me realization of the mystery that shrouds reality, but in no sense did philosophy 1. Introduction to philosophy afford me substantial training. Did you go through any strong emotional experience before becoming interested in spiritualism? I asked next, voicing a question that has interested psychologists. First, let both Joan and I say that we object to the word spiritualism, replied the author of our unseen guest. Not because we are over particular about mere names, but because the word spiritualism holds a meaning not synonymous with the present day interest in life or death, or in life after death. But to answer your question, no. Our adventure into psychism, issued from a busy life of working along lines wholly unrelated to the experience. No one had died with whom we longed to communicate. We had suffered no loss of any kind. We had had no particular thought of the future. We were living, in short, just the interested life of the day that the big majority lives. By accident, we ran across a Ouija board. We picked it up and began playing with it. And thus began the experience, as unheralded by emotional stress as might be your own first effort to run an adding machine. The next question I asked was, do you know of any circumstance that accounts for the fact that interest in spiritualism apparently grows and wanes in cycles? The last one having been about 50 years ago. Here is the answer. I think the cycle idea is overworked. It isn't clear to me that interest in psychic matters has occurred in cycles. There always was an interest in psychic matters. The point being that at different periods of the world's history, the interest has been described under different names. This interest, under whatever name, is tending to refocus just now. This, I think, can be attributed to three things. First, the work of the scientific investigators. The results of this work, conducted intensively, yet in that quietness of all scientific endeavor, are now being appreciated by all of us for the first time. This slow movement outward from the laboratory to the street is characteristic of all scientific investigation. Second, the war, and this would have been the First World War. The stream of war undoubtedly accelerated this outward movement. Third, the war's slain. If they still lived, they were close to Earth, millions of them. Stephen has told Joan and me that the presence of them dead in great numbers, coupled with the great numbers of their mourning friends here, fostered communication, making many persons sensitive who, except for the upheaval of the war, would never have discovered their psychic possibilities. Yet present interest in life after death would have come, I believe, war or no, because the world, as Stephen says, must have a peg on which to hang its faith. If old pegs are gone, new ones must come. I had some more basic questions to ask, one in particular that I thought Mark Twain would have liked to ask. Do you believe that there is any bitter aspect in life after death? such as Mark Twain outlined in Captain Stormfield's Visit to Heaven. Neither Joan nor I have read Mark Twain's story, was the answer, but of course, there is a bitter aspect to life after death. I think that says bitter. Our unseen guest has taught Joan and me that we are our own judges. When a man passes into life beyond, he sees wherein he failed here. He judges himself accordingly. It must be a bitter experience for one to wake up on the other side and realize that all his life he pursued ends unhelpful to the whole of which he was a part. To realize that we are all just parts of a whole, and that the whole, through the efforts of its parts, is seeking perfection, will not be an altogether happy realization to the man or woman who here has done little or nothing to advance the whole's struggle toward its ideal. This realization will be especially bitter when it is understood that earth life offered peculiar opportunities for service, opportunities of a kind not to be found in the life beyond. Okay. I think I lost my place. Hold on a sec. Let's see. It is true, we are all yet another chance to make good, but not from the same point of advantage that earth offers. A realization of wasted opportunity is always bitter. A realization of work that could have been easily accomplished, but which is nonetheless undone, is bitter. Doubly so when there is no escaping its future performance. Certainly, life after death has its bitter aspects, its regret, its remorse, its repentance. And the consolation is that the past is past, that it's dead, and that the present still is. Another sort of that opportunity to make good still beckons. The next question was, does H.G. Wells' idea of a finite God fit in with the notion of a world of spiritual values which are undying but still imperfect? My correspondent replied, Wells' idea of a finite God is, to use Stephen's word, a glimpse. God is yet in his fullness. He is in the making. We all, each of us, are a part of God, and we do our share in this making. However, as I understand Wells' thought, it misses the point that there are already in existence personalities that have attained supreme development, Christ and others. Finally, have your daily habits of thinking and acting undergone any changes since your acquaintance with our unseen guest? I asked. Here is the reply. Stephen has turned Joan's life and mine square around. Before we met Stephen, Joan was content to accept things and make the most of them, closing her eyes to their seeming incoherence. While I, without undue gloom, had come to the conclusion that the struggle for existence was pointless, not worth the trouble it caused us, that death at least ended things for the ego, no matter what it meant or did not mean to the cosmos. For both of us, the entire aspect of life is now changed. We know that we are today living in eternity, and that this knowledge has gladdened us, has given us ambition, has enabled us to know the other fellow. When one learns that he must live with himself and his fellows forever, the world looks new in opportunity and worthwhileness. One ceases to ask, what's the use? So that is the Darby interview. I found it interesting. I kind of think like, well, from the perspective of being anonymous, he could give all kinds of lip service. So, but yeah, I kind of feel like those were maybe not hard questions, particularly that they were given like via mail. Like he didn't have like a personal exchange with Darby. So Darby could come up with whatever he wanted to. I know that's terrible. I keep saying like, I don't believe them. I don't necessarily believe the Finleys and their experience, but Who knows? So, well, that is what I had prepared for today. Um, I think I'm going to wrap it up with that. Um, Simply because I got to get back to Dunton. Like I said, I know it's well within my wheelhouse. I'm going to get there, but I still have a month I have to freak out. So, um, what kind of things do you guys have prepared for your week? What are you guys doing this week? I'm going to take a bite of my apple while you guys think about what you're doing this week. I don't think I'm in too much of a delay today, so this is one of those. Stephanie, I was doing something. I don't have time. I don't have time to answer your questions. I'm just listening. Chocolate. Oh, Yakamo, can I come over? Taking a class online with toast and then all the regular stuff. Kellen, what is toast? Druid, I don't have your shit together enough. That's okay. You know, flying by the seat of your pants, sometimes you have to do it. Yeah, I want to know, Kellen, what is toast? I'm guessing it's an acronym for something. I'm always interested to know about oh, clothing store in England. Oh, interesting. Yeah, I need to know more about the chocolate too. Yeah, Druid, and I feel like that, like this year has kind of been that year for me. I've had some changes in my life, and so 2023, I decided kind of in December that 2023 was kind of going to be this year of saying yes. Not necessarily to like the yes, 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 but more like, I'm not going to seek job opportunities. I've kind of taken a sabbatical. I'm kind of living on my savings. But that I would do some kind of pro bono work. So that's, in terms of when I say my profession, I am still doing work in my profession. I'm not getting paid for it. I'm doing work on something that I have signed an NDA for, so I can't really talk much about it, but it's something I think is very important. And it's kind of law enforcement adjacent, I can put it that way. So I think it's something that's really important, in terms of fighting crime, not necessarily fighting crime, but solving crimes. Put it that way. It doesn't fight crime, it solves crimes. So, yeah, that's been like my professional focus this year, and they don't always need me. So I really have put so much more effort into the things that bring me joy, like quilting, sewing, all of the things I always did, but they're more front and center right now. That might change by December. I might have to go back to like the mortgage paying jobs, but yeah, I've kind of taken that attitude of like, well, sometimes there is no plan for the week, and sometimes I just sort of revel in what I can get done and what is exciting to me on a day-to-day basis. And sometimes that's like really good. That's like good for your soul. Sometimes I have to give myself a little bit of like a little bit of parenting, as my therapist used to say. Sometimes we have to parent our inner child, and our inner child wants to play, but we have to say like, no, get your ass up and do something. So, anyway, I digress. So, oh gosh, okay. Oh, Padma, sourdough bread, yummy. Yeah. Oh, why are you stuck, Druid? Is it just because, like, okay, because you're spaced out, because you got stuff? Because, I mean, I really feel like, ah, the Grateful Dead. Yes. Druid knows. I used to be a baby deadhead. Um, yes, Unsolved Crimes and Forensic Files. I spend a lot of time on that. Yeah, I knew that Word and Bird Nerd. She's doing some stuff anti-crime related. Yes, I knew that. Um, what's the best way to hang a quilt on the wall? Um, so I hang my quilts, put a rod pocket in it, and then hang it from a rod. I actually found a system that it's a hanging system. It was a little bit pricey, but this is terrible. I shouldn't say this, but I think it's easy to make the thing. But I'm drawing a complete blank on the company. But basically, it's a magnetic system, and it's a little bit pricey, but it works. And so for me, that was like, it was worth it. But basically, what it is these little they're these little metal brackets that you can mount on the wall, either like screwing them in the wall, or you can mount them with those 3M strips, which I was kind of like, ooh, will it actually hold? It will. I was really surprised. The magnets and the 3M strips are strong enough to hold like a full blown quilt. And basically, these little metal things have a giant like a rare earth magnet on them, and the rod that you would use are these flat pieces of metal that you can get at the home improvement store. They make one that's like really long. And I think it's long enough for like a double quilt, but you have to, if you want one for like a king size quilt, you would have to like duct tape two of them together. But what I did was I got one of those metal rods and I made it its own little pouch because it's like yucky tool steel. So I made it its own little pouch, and then you just slide that thing in the rod pocket and literally just throw it up there on the wall against those little, you've mounted those little things across the wall. And the magnets just grab your quilt. That is the system I use. And I'll tell you who turned me onto it was Word and Bird Nerd. She had bought the system. I saw it and I was like, this feels like it might be good for my house because I have plaster walls. And drilling into horsehair plaster with lath behind it is a nightmare. And you start, like, your walls start coming down when you drill too much into them. So that's what's worked for me. I think like any kind of like hook type hangers, like you can get those ones that are sort of metal or wooden. They're sort of like a curved thing that comes out from the wall, like a curtain rod kind of thing. Those work too. So, oh wow, a medical examiner. That's interesting, Drew. Yeah, I love that stuff. I absolutely love sourdough, you guys. Padma, I wish you were lived closer. I would I would come by and collect some bread. Old tops with paper on the back. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. You were talking about tops. And are you talking, I'm assuming you're talking about ones that are like foundation or um, English paper pieced. Um, for something like that, because it's lightweight, I almost would still, I mean, in my case, still use maybe the same system, but like maybe just use little clips to hold it up. Yeah, quilts on walls, they do get dirty. You have to dust them. And if there's any kind of like ripple in them and you ignore it for too long, you will find dust settling in those ripples. Um, so yeah, you do have to dust them, and I just take stuff down, shake it out, put something new up. Um, yeah. So let's see. Yeah, Druid. I know that you're going through some stuff right now. Um, Feel free to give me a shout if you need anything. Yes, you're absolutely right. Dust makes fabric dry. A dried out fabric starts to dry rot. Um, so yeah. Well, and if you think about like quilts, if you see an old quilt and it just has like, places where the stuff is just, like it's ripping open in a place that shouldn't be strained. One of two things is happening. Either it's been washed to death and the fabric is just, getting thin and especially the way they used to wash. I mean, I think we kind of mentioned this the other day, like the mangle on the washing machine. That I'm sure was like rough on anything you put through that, just like rolling it through, and the scrubbing, the washboard, all that kind of stuff, like it just starts to eat away at the fibers, right? So that's one way that quilts become weak. The other way is just light getting to them. And fabric softener, yeah, because it coats everything. Yeah, dry in the sun, they do that too. Well, and the beautiful thing about drying things in the sun is it makes it smell really good, and it bleaches. The sun has that bleaching aspect. Yes, the mangle. I'm right, guys. Right? I think Eva, you were talking about the mangles the other day. I can't remember. Was it? Yeah, when Mary was here, I think we mentioned that. Yeah, so it's the thing that it's the rollers, and you feed the stuff through to squeeze the water out of it, I guess. Um, yeah. So light and heat are really bad for fabric too. So you think about, they always tell you like don't store things in your attic because heat. And you don't put things in the basement because of damp. So yeah, the best place to store quilts is the best way to store quilts is flat. Now, who but a museum has that kind of storage, and even most museums don't have that kind of storage. But I know a lot of like the big deal collectors, they literally like on the beds in their guest rooms, they just layer the quilts, and they do the quilt turnings periodically to like, get the ones on the bottom up and to air them out. I wish I had the room and ability to do that. I have a big stack of quilts, and I have to find a way to better store them. But they are stored in a temperature controlled area, for the most part. So yeah. Um, Fabric softener, breaking strands of fabric. Oh, huh. That's interesting. Yeah, I don't like fabric softener because it, for one, a lot of fabric softener makes me itch. So I don't use it for that reason, but also because it coats the fabric. And towels with fabric softener, my grandmother used to put like gobs of fabric softener in the towels, especially if she dry them outside. And I was like, I like a towel dried outside because yeah, it's gonna like sand your skin off, but it dries so well. It soaks up, all of the water off your body. Whereas a fabric softener filled towel just like wipes it just wipes the water all over you, and it feels gross. So yeah, I don't love fabric softener. I've heard that vinegar is a good fabric softener. I mean, I've used vinegar, but yeah, I don't. I guess I don't really think about it very often. I mean, I clean stuff with vinegar. I'll have to try that with as fabric softener. Yeah, it's like a towel, a bath towel dried outside is like Captain Crunch. It's so wonderful. You just take the top layer off. Take the top layer of your mouth and your skin off with your sun dried towel and your bowl of Captain Crunch. Yeah, I agree. Vinegar is good for a lot of stuff. And I like pickly things, so vinegar's my jam for sure. Well, guys, I'm gonna get back to Duntoning, and do you guys want to raid or no? Towels are like sandpaper. Yeah, I think a sandpapery towel is good. Yeah. Oh yeah, vinegar and baking soda are very good. Yeah. Okay. Well then, let's raid Jamie and say hi to Jamie. I'm gonna run away because I got a Dunton. So as always, thank you for joining me, my friends. I'm so glad you're here. Um, I will be back Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern. Don't know what we're gonna do Thursday. We'll see. Okay, let's do this raid. Oops. Ah, crud. I can't even remember how to spell Jamie's. Thank you, Eva. Okay. See you guys Thursday.